Study hard. Let's get to our questions. Question 11. During the week, Monday through Friday, you get to bed at a reasonable time so you can wake up refreshed for work. You also avoid alcohol from Monday through Friday. However, on Saturday, you stay up late partying and drinking with your friends. Your behavior change is most likely due to what? Okay, kind of a tricky question here. We're looking at behavior change. Your behavior changes when it comes to the weekend compared to Monday through Friday. Monday through Friday, you're getting a lot of rest. You're not drinking. Saturday comes around, all of a sudden you're drinking and partying. Why? Well, if you go to work after drinking, you won't wake up refreshed. Okay. And punishment is going to be available, right? You know that if you go in hungover, work is not going to be enjoyable. However, on Saturday, drinking and partying, okay, there's reinforcement available, right? Engaging in these behaviors, okay, now there's reinforcement. Saturday signals to you reinforcement is now available for partying and drinking. So when your behavior changes in the presence of a discriminative stimuli, an SD, which is signaling reinforcement is available, in this case, the day of the week is our SD, we are saying our behavior change is due to what? Is it due to an establishing operation or an abolishing operation? Now, be careful here. Establishing operations and abolishing operations are motivating operations. They increase or decrease the value of partying and drinking. There's no indication that partying and drinking don't have a lot of value to you during the week. You may have all the motivation in the world to party and drink. But remember the key, right? Is reinforcement available for those acts? The motivation might be there. That doesn't mean there's going to be reinforcement available for partying and drinking. Saturday is telling you now reinforcement's available for partying and drinking. Therefore, behavior change is going to be under the stimulus control of the day of the week. Self-control, of course, is a misnomer. Okay, everything is still due to the environment. So we're not going to claim it's self-control. Our behavior changes due to the stimulus control of the weekend versus the week. 12, during RBT training, Linda shows the trainees a video of a client working on a worksheet. She asks the trainees to record the number of times the client goes off task, which is defined as doing something other than working on the worksheet for more than 10 seconds straight. Trainee 1 records 5 times, Trainee 2 records 5 times, and Trainee 3 records 5 times. The client actually went off task 8 times. The data the trainees took lacks what? I really enjoy accuracy, validity, and reliability questions because I think it's so important as analysts that our data has these properties. Now, that might seem like an obvious statement, but when you've got a team of technicians, you need to be ensured they understand the difference between accuracy, validity, and reliability. What is the difference here? Okay. Our trainees all recorded the same data. They all said it happened 5 times. In actuality, it happened 8 times. Is that data accurate? Well, no, you misrepresented what actually happened. It is not indicative of the actual data, therefore it's inaccurate. Is it valid? What is valid? Valid means we're actually measuring the target of interest or the target behavior. What did they measure the right behavior? Yes, they measured the correct behavior. They measured what they meant to measure. It was valid. They just did it inaccurately. And then is the data reliable? Okay. We can't say yes or no. Reliability means if you took the data again and again, you would produce the same data. Okay. So if we had the trainees do it over and over again, if they produced it 5 times, 5 times, 5 times, right? If they get 5 times every time, the data would be reliable. It still would be inaccurate though. However, there's not enough information to say it lacks reliability or that it doesn't. So C is still not going to be a better answer than A, which is accuracy. And then does our data lack inter-observer agreement? Well, no, we've got a great inter-observer agreement, right? Everybody had the same data. They just were all wrong, okay? So what is the lesson here? Our answer is going to be accuracy. The data lacks accuracy, but data can be inaccurate and still be valid, reliable, and have IOA, just like data can be accurate but lack validity. It can be reliable but lack validity, okay? None of these coexist, right? But we need all 3. Since our trainees, okay, did not actually record 8 times, their data was inaccurate. 13, Gavin is an 8-year-old boy with an intellectual disability. He wants to participate in the school play that is taking place in 1 month. He needs to learn 3 lines by then. Gavin also struggles with self-advocacy and self-help skills. Which of the following targets would be most appropriate to immediately address with Gavin? Be careful with this question. Remember, when we're choosing targets, what are we worried about? Worried about social validity, worried about the meaningfulness of change, the impactfulness of change, what is important to our clients, what is important to the stakeholders. At this time, Gavin is participating in this play. He wants to learn these lines, obviously important. He also struggles with advocacy and self-help skills. So what are we going to choose? Which of the following targets is going to be most appropriate? Is it going to be A, learn the school lines to his play? Yeah, I would say that's absolutely a target you want to address immediately. Learning those lines so he can functionally participate in this play with his peers at a peer level is going to be very meaningful. That holds a lot of social validity in the moment. Given the time frame of 1 month, we can afford to shift time away from other things to make sure Gavin coexists and is able to showcase these skills at an acceptable level. It's meaningful, okay? It's socially valid. It clearly is important. Now, what about communicating with strangers in the grocery store? Well, that's also important. He struggles with self-advocacy and self-help, but we have time to work on the strangers in the grocery store. That doesn't seem to be a pressing need. The advocacy and self-help skills are pressing, but specifically strangers in the grocery store, that doesn't seem to be a primary goal right now. It's more important that over the next month, he's able to complete this socially valid task of engaging in the play than it is for him at 8 years old to go to strangers and talk to them in the grocery store. So A is still better than B. Let's read C. Increasing fluency on his math facts. Well, nothing about math was mentioned in his targets right now. That's clearly not as important as the other things. C is not as better than A. And then D, improving his ability to sweep floors on chore day. Again, self-help skills, important. Improving his ability to sweep the floors on chore day. Is that more socially valid at the moment than him learning the lines in the play? No. It's much more meaningful for him to engage in this behavior of learning the lines than improving his ability to sweep a floor. So takeaways, right? 1, of course, always read all of your answer choices. Pick the best answer. 2, we're picking our socially valid, meaningful outcome goals. Okay. In this case, given the time frame, given the targets, learning the lines to a school play will benefit Gavin much more right now than these other targets. 14, Lucy develops a new behavior plan targeting Glenda's aggression at home and at school. She implements the behavior plan after taking baseline data across settings. 2 weeks after the intervention, significant progress is made on reducing aggression. Lucy tells her team to no longer implement the intervention for next week and a half. What type of design is Lucy most likely using? Pretty easy, I think, experimental design question. What is Lucy doing? Ask yourself that, okay? Well, what does she do? She implements the behavior plan after taking baseline. 2 weeks after intervention, progress is made. Now she's going to remove the intervention. Well, this is classic what? What's classic? Withdrawal, right? It's not going to be multiple baseline and multiple probe because we don't do withdrawals and multiple baseline and multiple probe, okay? You can withdraw an alternating treatment, but we're only looking at one treatment here, so we're not alternating anything. We're simply withdrawing our intervention. So we go baseline, intervention, withdraw the intervention for the next week and a half. Now, we can talk about the ethics of withdrawing a working plan focused on aggression, but that's not what the question is asking. Lesson. Answer what the question is asking. It's not an ethical question. We're not worried about Glenda's ethics. We're only worried about what is she doing? Okay, what type of design is she using? That's what the question wants to know. Only answer what the question is asking. Okay, nothing more, nothing less. 15, Sullivan's Steakhouse is fully booked every Friday and Saturday. The most popular and most expensive item on the menu is the lobster. The general manager of Sullivan's tells each member of the waitstaff that they will earn a $10 bonus for every pound of lobster they sell. What type of contingency is the general manager implementing? All right, so if we look at our answer choices, it's a group contingency question. When working with group contingency questions, ask yourself, is one person responsible for the whole group? Is the whole group responsible for the whole group? Or is each person responsible for themselves? If you can answer those questions, you can answer these questions. In this case, which one is it? Well, each member of the wait staff is going to earn a $10 bonus for every pound of lobster they sell. Okay, he tells each individual member that for each pound of lobster each one of them sells, they will each earn a $10 bonus. Meaning that wait staff, each person individually earns a $10 bonus for the pound of lobster they sell. They're not relying on their other members. This isn't a pooled bonus. It's not for how much the staff sells. It's for each individual sell. And they're not relying on one person. It's not saying out of the 10 people on the wait staff, we will give a $10 bonus for each pound Greg sells. No, we are looking at each individual member of the wait staff for their individual sales will individually earn a $10 bonus based on their behavior. Therefore, what are we looking at? Is it independent, interdependent, dependent, or natural? It's not natural, obviously. Dependent, okay, is our hero, or when we're reliant on one person for the whole group. Interdependent, we're relying on the group for the group. And then we are looking at an independent where you're reliant on yourself. It's just in a group setting. So what type of contingency is the general manager implementing? A, independent group contingency. 16, Gracie is a 5-year-old girl with a learning disability. Anytime Gracie sees a puppy or a baby, she will smile and exclaim, "Aw." The puppy and the baby together represent what? All right. So what is happening? Gracie sees a puppy. She says, "Aw." She sees a baby. She says, "Aw." Together they are what? Are they a response class? Well, no, the puppy and the baby aren't the response. What is the response? The response is aw. We have a singular response. We don't have a response class. We do, however, have multiple stimuli. And those stimuli are doing what? Well, they're evoking the same function. They have the same impact on Gracie's behavior. That makes them what? Makes them a functional stimulus class. Okay. Gracie sees the puppy. Her response is aw. Gracie sees the baby. Aw. Stimuli that look different, sound different, appear different, but have the same effect. Okay. Still qualify as a stimulus class. Do they have topographical similarities? Well, last time I checked, a puppy and a baby do not look similar. Okay, so no, they don't have topographical similarities. Remember, topography is what the stimuli looks like or what the behavior looks like. Not the case here. And then are they positive reinforcers? Well, we don't really know. We have no idea the impact of Gracie's future behavior. Her current behavior, she says, aw. Okay. Anytime she sees a puppy or behavior or baby, she says, aw. But we don't know how it actually impacts other behaviors. Okay. Not enough information to say they're going to be positive reinforcers, right? We do have plenty of information to indicate that these are stimulus classes, or it is a stimulus class, however. So B is going to be our answer. 17, when conducting a task analysis, the length of the task chain that is created is partially dependent on which of the following. Okay, kind of a tricky question, right? Remember, we want the best answer. You're looking for the best answer. So when we're creating a task chain, you're relying on a couple different things. Out of our answer choices, okay, what is it going to be most partially dependent on? Is it going to be what you think is appropriate, what your supervisor thinks is appropriate, what is appropriate for the skill level of your client, or what the parent thinks is appropriate? Okay, kind of tricky. You might be thinking, well, I'm the behavior analyst, what I think matters. Of course. But, are we worried about what you think about the task chain? Okay. Or are we individualizing the task chains based on our client's needs? We're individualizing task chains based on the client needs. So ultimately, your decision, what you think is appropriate, should really be what is appropriate for the skill level of your client. Okay. If it's not appropriate for the skill level of your client, you shouldn't be using it. So even though you think something else maybe, or maybe you're being supervised and they think something else, or even the parent thinks something else is more appropriate, ultimately what it boils down to is it appropriate for the skill level of your client? The client comes first. Okay. So when we're deciding the length of a task chain, it's going to be partially dependent on what is appropriate for the skill level of our client. Now, it's also going to be dependent on whatever model we use to create the task chain, of course. Okay. But first and foremost, more important than these other things, what is the skill level of our client? That's what we need to set our length based on. Okay. Skill or a client comes first. 18, Perry works from home, but is required to clock in and clock out each day. The time he spends working is monitored through a company-wide monitoring system. Perry is required to work at least 30 hours per week. What type of reinforcement schedule is Perry on? Okay, so this is going to be what? Is this a compound reinforcement schedule? Well, no, we're looking at a singular reinforcement schedule here. Okay, so we're going to eliminate concurrent. We're going to eliminate tandem. So we're looking at a fixed interval or a fixed ratio. Basic reinforcement schedule. When we deal with basic reinforcement schedules like intervals and ratios, we ask ourselves, are we dealing with time or are we dealing with responses? Does it matter how many responses Perry puts in during the week? No, Perry can put in 1 million responses. Perry can put in 1 response. Still doesn't matter. He needs to work at least 30 hours. Only after that 30 hours, okay, is he going to receive whatever reinforcement might be. That's his requirement, though. So what type of reinforcement schedule is he on? Obviously, a fixed interval schedule. Now, you're going to say, or you might say, well, it says at least 30 hours per week. Couldn't it be a variable? No, right? Because a variable means it's going to be an average of 30, meaning sometimes Perry could work less than 30. Sometimes he works more. It's not the case. He needs to hit at least 30, okay? He can stop at 30, but he always needs to hit at least 30. That's what makes it fixed. And since it's a time, it's going to be an interval schedule. Only after that 30 hours passes, only after he works the required amount of time, regardless of the number of responses, will Perry receive reinforcement. 19, which of the following choices could not function as an unconditioned punisher? What is an unconditioned punisher? It's our primary punishers. They're unlearned, okay? They're based on genetics and things that we all innately find punishing, okay? Now, that's generalizing, obviously, but on the test, you're a little black and white, okay? Obviously, some of us have higher pain thresholds. Some of us find some taste more painful than others, some temperatures more painful than other. The point is unconditioned punishers, okay, or unlearned, right? The question wants to know what can function as an unconditioned punisher, okay? I'm sorry, what could not function? So don't make the mistake I did, right? Read it carefully. Be aware of those not words, those except words. So out of these, what could not function as an unconditioned punisher? A shock from an electrical outlet. Do you need to learn that a shock is painful, that it is potentially punishing? No, right? That's how kids learn typically. Don't stick things in an outlet. You're going to get shocked, okay? A shock could certainly function as an unconditioned punisher. Jumping into a freezing cold pool. Temperature. Do you need to learn that freezing cold is bad? Not necessarily, right? This could absolutely function as an unconditioned punisher. From birth, right, we seek warmth, okay? So B is also possibly an unconditioned punisher. C, rejection when asking someone on a date. Are you born as an infant, okay? Being afraid or being punished by social rejection? No, that comes later in life, okay? For some people, it comes earlier in life, but it's still a learned thing. It's socially mediated. Only once you experience that quote unquote emotional pain, right, to use a mentalism, do you start to understand that rejection doesn't feel good. It might reduce future behavior of asking somebody on a date. Okay. However, we're not born that. It's not born with that. It's not innate. Therefore, it could not function as an unconditioned punisher. What about overly salty food? Well, sure. If you give a baby overly salty food, right, that's potentially unconditioned based on their taste buds. Okay. The only one that has to be learned is this rejection of asking someone on a date due to the social mediation, right? For one. And also, okay, you're going to have to get a response when asking someone on a date. Okay. These other things, right? From birth, right? Pain, warmth, okay, avoiding discomfort are all things we innately do. So which of the following could not function as an unconditioned punisher? Rejection when asking someone on a date. Pretty easy question. And then 20, you are currently working as a BCBA for a private practice in your hometown. The caseload you were given consists of 10 clients, which allows you to meet your 30-hour per week billable requirement. You have just enough time each month to supervise your current caseload. Yesterday, a high priority case was referred to your practice. Your boss informs you that they want you to take the case. What should you do? Okay, remember the task list. End of the day, all of our questions are based on the task list. If you know the task list, you know the test. All right. Think about what the task list says about time management, the rules for taking on cases, okay, caseload, that type of thing. Our information says you have 10 clients and you have just enough time each month. If you get a high priority case in addition to these other ones, okay, that might be an issue. So what do? Did you A, discharge one of your clients who need services the least? Well, this is not going to be an appropriate reason to discharge a client just to bring on another one. Okay. You need to have a good reason to discharge a client. And just because they might need services less than another client doesn't mean they don't need them at all. So A, of course, is inappropriate. B, take on the client in addition to your other clients. Well, you should only take on what you can manage. And based on our information, it appears that you only now just have enough time. If you had a high priority case, your clients might suffer. Okay, so B probably isn't going to be the best case scenario. C, refuse to take the case until you're able to open up more time in your schedule. Yes, right. You only take on what you can manage. You ensure you have the time and the resources and the training and the competency before ever taking on a client. In this case, before you have more time, you just can't make it work. C is going to be the most appropriate response. What about D? Take on the client, but allow your RBTs to manage the case. Absolutely not. I mean, I've heard of this. I've seen this. Not appropriate. Okay. You are still responsible for this case. So what should you do? C, refuse to take the case until you're able to open up more time in your schedule. All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with some more BCBA practice